Park, the elephants walk through here. Nobody went there and bothered to notice that that park had been clear-felled and eucalyptus trees had been planted for the Birla rayon plant. Those Adivasis were shot at, and then we were all told, oh, they are Maoists. They were trying to create a parallel state. There was a weapons display. I went there. I went to the hospital. I saw these people who were, I felt like I was towering over them. They were like small and with their heads broken open, their feet blown off. And there was a weapons display of kitchen knives, of axes. One of them had collected a polythene bag full of bees to overthrow the Indian state with. And from then it started. Every time, in Mehendi Khera, wherever you looked at nonviolent protest, they were always labeled as Maoist at a time when there was nothing like the kind of Maoist movement there is now. So, why does the government need this war? Why does it need it now, and why does it need it so badly? You see, I think we have to understand that what it's doing is to inflate the meaning of Maoist to a point where it loses any political sense. Anybody who is raising issues of injustice, anybody who's refusing to surrender their land or their resources, whether they are armed, whether they are not, are today called Maoists. An old uncle of mine called me the other day and he said, I've stopped working now. I've lots of time for you and I'd like to help you to do something. So I said, what do you want to help me do? He says, these issues of injustice that you keep raising, I'd like to do something. I said, please don't talk like that on the phone. They'll say you're a Maoist. Honestly, it's become that. It suits the Maoists, sure. Why shouldn't it? Why should any political party refuse that invitation? But coming back to what is it that makes it so urgent for the government to fight this war? In 2004, when Manmohan Singh came to power, by 2005, there were huge numbers of MOUs signed with mining companies, with not just mining, with every kind of infrastructure. So in that entire forest belt, you had an MOU on every mountain, on every river, on every forest. So what they refer to the Maoist corridor, we call the MOUist corridor. And those MOUs were signed by the biggest corporations in the world. And since 2005, they've been waiting. If you read the business papers, you will get a much more honest, because the business papers don't have any sense of irony, So they're very open about what all this is about. So you read the business papers, you'll understand quite clearly which companies are waiting for which patch of land and how the delays are affecting them. So 2005, they arrived, all these corporations, circling around these forest areas like vultures, waiting, sitting in the first-class airport lounge and sipping their drinks and blinking like lazy predators, saying, come on, we've paid you. Where do those thousands of crores of the Reddy brothers and the Madhu Kodas come from? The media is quite happy to highlight the fact that these politicians are corrupt, but never do they try and ask who paid them. Where did that money come from? That money came from the forests, from the rivers, and from the mountains of our country. Just the bauxite in Orissa alone is worth $4 trillion. Just the bauxite. Then you have the iron ore and you have everything else. If you have any idea how these MOUs and how these contracts are working, the government for iron ore gets 24 rupees a ton. The private corporation gets 5,000. Can you believe that? And these are not my figures. Read the Lokayukta report and you will find out. So, for those companies to buy governments, to buy judges, to buy the media, of course, is nothing. To buy universities, to buy intellectuals, not by saying, here, how much do you come for, but, there are very sophisticated ways of buying people. For example, I'll give you a grant. What sort of research would you like to do? The biggest steel corporations in this country, the Jindals, the Mittals, Tata, they fund half the activists in this country. They fund the biggest sort of cutting edge Indian artists who are having shows in MoMA and all over the place, making large steel buckets or small tiffin carriers or whatever the new thing is. But they fund them, So they buy our silence. And sometimes we don't even know that they've bought our silence. If you look at all the ways in which these NGOs work, if you look at the ways in which organizations like DFID work, the Tatas can fund both sides. They can fund the media, they can fund the activists, they can also make the mines, they can buy the government, they can do anything. I mean, you saw, I don't know how many of you have seen those transcripts of how many senior journalists who set themselves up as being very neutral and very radical, actually lobbying for a particular ministry because Tata should benefit from that. Today's scams are not in crores, they're in tens of thousands of crores. This is the kind of money that is going around. So what we have in opposition to this, apart from a few of us, who are yelling from the rooftops, what we have in opposition to this is an insurrection in the heart of this country. The Maoists are the most militant end of that insurrection. But there's a whole bandwidth, there's a whole biodiversity of resistance that has sprung up. All of them don't agree with each other. Sometimes they hate each other. Sometimes they have wars in which they kill each other. But all of them agree about one thing, and that is that this massive sale is just not on. So, whether it's the Narmada Bachao Andolan, or whether it's the movements in Kalinganagar, or whether it's what's going on in POSCO, or Jharkhand, or Lalgarh, or in Chhattisgarh, the fact is, whether it's the Maoists, at the heart of this problem is land. I mean, I have studied and followed closely the Narmada movement for many years. We know that just big dams alone have displaced more than 33 million people. All of the big infrastructural projects, the first thing they do is to displace the poor. The first thing they do. Any dam you go to now, they ask them, of course they'll say that people should be resettled, but have there been? I mean, even today the Narmada Andolan is there. Sardar Sarovar, Maheshwar, the whole scam of rehabilitation. The government openly says we don't have land. We cannot give you land for land. But how did you find 140,000 hectares of land for SEZs so suddenly to give to the corporations? Suddenly, when you want it, you find it. Even if you have to kill people. None of us is here, at least certainly I'm not here to defend the killing of innocent people by anybody. Not by the CPM, not by the Maoists, not by the government. That's not my brief. And I'm also completely contemptuous of this atrocity-based political analysis. It's like some condemnation industry where we all have to buy shares and, show how great we are at shareholdings. When the CRPF were killed, when 76 CRPF people were killed, there was, by the Maoists in Dantewada, there was this incredible pressure. You went in, you wrote about them, you painted them as, you